How did almost $100 million become a personal slush fund in one of the nation's poorest states, featuring an NFL legend? We'll show you exactly how, with the text receipts to prove it. You've seen the headline and probably heard about Brett Favre's involvement, but you might not fully grasp how deep the Mississippi welfare scheme went or what names are being allegedly connected to its execution. The way it was done will blow your mind. The story begins in 2010, on the last play of Favre's NFL career. The veteran quarterback suffered a concussion, and his 20-year stint in the NFL was over. Favre said the brain injury, the mountain of evidence regarding CTE, and having grandchildren sparked an interest in concussion treatment.
Prevacus.
Prevacus.
Wait, is it Prevacus?
It's Prevacus.
There we go, Prevacus. All right, Doc.
After retiring, Favre met Florida State neuroscientist Jake Van Landingham, who founded Prevacus, a company developing a nasal spray concussion treatment.
So we give it nasally through this applicator here.
What's important is that we treat it.
This drug, I think it'll greatly help long-term health.
That's why Prevacus is such an important drug.
It is something that's out there, it's groundbreaking, it's something that can change the complexion of things.
You might be thinking, what do these players know about the pharmaceutical business? But you have to remember, these players are the ones affected by the consequences of CTE.
So that's really my investment in this. It's not monetary, it's about being able to protect the player.
Getting NFL players on board also gives potential access to some of the NFL's neuroscience research fund, which totaled about $40 million in 2017.
The NFL should try this as a clinical trial pre-season because this is a game changer.
The next phase for Prevacus, which Favre was now backing heavily, would be human trials.
If we could double the budgets of your centers, what could you do and how much faster could you do it?
I think if we had funds from the federal government that would sponsor private companies, that would be easier for private companies to get investors. It would improve the value to the investor by having federal government support. Now, that's a little out there.
Favre and Van Landingham were the head of the marketing push, leveraging connections in the NFL and in Mississippi. Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the U.S., and Favre grew up in the small town of Kiln, where both his parents were school teachers.
Favre, toss to the end zone, touchdown.
He went on to play at Southern Miss, where a great career sent him to the NFL in the second round.
Atlanta has selected Brett Favre, quarterback, Southern Mississippi.
Brett Favre from Southern Mississippi, a 4-year starter at Southern Miss.
For obvious reasons, his professional career made him a hero in the state, where he returned to after retiring.
Brett Favre's got a gold jacket.
And it was a state he seemed to love back. And he clearly loved his alma mater. His daughter attended Southern Miss, where she played volleyball, and he worked closely with the football program on recruiting young talent, such as Deion Sanders' son. From the outside, it looked like Favre was just a home-loving retiree, helping where he could and giving what he had. But according to a mountain of court filings that have come to compose one of the largest fraud scandals ever, that may not have been the case.
I believe that there's an opportunity to help people help themselves.
It's 2019, and the former director of the Mississippi Department of Human Services, John Davis, is explaining details of a welfare program that affects his home state. He talks about the vision of welfare funds being used to create professional opportunities for the state's poorest.
We can give them that empowerment through professional and personal opportunities, workforce development.
Within a year, Davis was arrested, and it opened up the floodgates.
Massive welfare scandal.
24 criminal conspiracy and fraud charges.
Millions of dollars that were supposed to help needy families.
Say Davis used sham contracts to improperly funnel the cash to a series of projects.
The investigation is not over.
Count 1, conspiracy. How do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
By May 2020, the Mississippi State Auditor's Office released a damning report that questioned the use of $94 million from the state's Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program. In 1996, the TANF was introduced as the new welfare system, and it created work rules, time limits on welfare aid, and very importantly, gave states more leeway on how those grants should be spent. It is composed of 4 guidelines that emphasize bringing families out of poverty and towards steady employment. The Mississippi legislature added their own additional guideline to prevent fraud and abuse. John Davis led the agency that distributed those funds. According to the report, the program allegedly funneled $94 million to 2 nonprofit groups, which leads us to Nancy New, who was the executive director of the MCEC, which received $60 million in welfare spending from 2016 to 2019. With that money, New did some questionable things, like giving $5 million to former WWE star Ted DiBiase, also known as $1 Million Man. And his family.
My son, Ted DiBiase. Consider yourselves on notice.
It was used to fund the family's self-help program called Law of 16. $2 million given from a welfare program to a self-help company, as well as fictitious services, bogus jobs, first-class travel, and even one of his son's luxury stay at a rehab center for $160,000, according to the suit. The suit went on to show that Marcus Dupree was paid $371,000 to act as a celebrity endorser and motivational speaker, a duty he never performed. In all, 38 individuals and organizations were listed in the suit, none bigger than Brett Favre. Three years of text between Nancy New and Favre feature some pretty damning evidence. Her organization paid Brett Favre $1.1 million for speeches he never gave. Favre also channeled more than $2 million in government funds into Prevacus, and he knew just the people to become buddies with to make it happen. Text messages showed that then Mississippi governor and fellow Southern Miss alum Phil Bryant worked with Favre to help secure funding for a new multi-million-dollar volleyball facility through Nancy New's organization. $5 million of welfare funds for a volleyball facility where his daughter played. The project planners referred to the building as a wellness center and said the building would serve needy families in Mississippi, all to meet the TANF guidelines. When asked by Mississippi Today if Favre had ever discussed the volleyball arena with Bryant, Favre said no, as if we were never going to see these text messages. Text messages also show that Bryant was updated when Prevacus started receiving state funding. Then, there's the attempt to recruit Deion Sanders' son. This is a long text from Favre to Bryant, and in it, he presses Bryant for funding for a new indoor football facility. In 2019, the younger Sanders was a standout high school quarterback in his junior season, and Favre was working to bring him to Southern Miss. According to text, Sanders asked Favre where the indoor football facility was, to which Favre responded that they don't have one, yet. It was essentially a $1.5 million ask that was placed just a few months before John Davis was arrested and the dominoes started to fall. Bryant seemed to know those dominoes were falling. and knew that Nancy New and Favre were key characters in the alleged misappropriation. In total, Favre is accused of misappropriating $8 million in public funds meant for Mississippi's poorest families. Favre denies having any knowledge that government welfare funds were being used for his projects. No one ever told me, and I didn't know, that funds designated for welfare recipients were going to the university or me. Favre even had a public spat on Twitter with State Auditor Shad White that defended himself. White vehemently disagreed with Favre. And it's hard to believe that Favre didn't know these were welfare funds. After Favre asked for the football facility funds, Bryant laid out an explanation for why use of these particular state funds are a direct use of funds intended for the low-income community. The big names listed in the suit lead to a never-ending rabbit hole of fraud, improper spending, and favors. Whether Favre, New, Dupree, DiBiase, Bryant, or anyone else listed knew that these funds were intended for Mississippi's neediest families may be irrelevant. The ease with which these funds were diverted and turned into a personal slush fund is alarming. People who were putting on a performance in front of Congress were embezzling millions at the exact same time. And one painful part of this story is that many will get out of this legal situation. What constitutes proper welfare spending under TANF is vague. If we call a volleyball stadium a wellness center for needy families, boom, proper welfare spending. If Prevacus is going to build a drug manufacturing facility in Mississippi, boom, it's welfare for jobless citizens. Everything has a vague explanation. Every court battle will feature these arguments. But the court of public opinion is unlikely to go the same direction. Favre earned over $140 million over the course of his career, and that's not counting sponsorships. Mississippi ranks 47th on government spending, making it one of the smallest pools of funds to draw from. It's fair to question why Favre's income couldn't be used to fund his own investments and his own projects. It's fair to say what happened here is wrong and cruel. It's fair to be upset, especially when we have the receipts. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. It means a lot to us and lets us know that you want more original sports storytelling. Also, Favre's foundation regularly donated $10,000 to Hope Haven. It's not totally clear if those donations will continue in the aftermath of this massive fraud. The organization does a lot to help those in need in Mississippi, just like the funds that were misappropriated were intended to do. If you feel inspired to donate, please check the link in the description. Talk to you soon.